2024 was supposed to be a recovery year, but for whom? Putin's continuous recruitment has made the Russian army one of the world's largest, with 1.3 million active and 2 million reserve personnel. However, this display of power cost Russia dearly on the home front, which it will soon pay. Zelensky offered only scant suggestions about Ukraine's second half of 2024 ambitions, NATO military support, and Russia's early failures. After Congress approved a $60 billion aid package in April, NATO began supplying F-16 fighter fighters in July after months of waiting. The first half of the year was devoted to preparing for conflict, the second half unleashing it. Putin is facing a crushing defeat despite Russia's huge numbers and resources. Russia intensified its invasion of Ukraine in May 2024. On paper, Russia had many wartime options. Constant conscription and Ukraine's population of less than half of Russia's gave it the manpower advantage. Perhaps the only country that produced the ammunition used by Soviet-era tanks and artillery batteries, the major military equipment on both sides of the war, it possessed the material advantage. The U.S. Congress had debated giving more aid to Ukraine for months, arguing that subsidizing the war was useless. Despite this, Russia's summer invasion failed, possibly due to the military command's strange decisions. Except for the first blitzkrieg attempt to approach Kyiv from the north, which was repulsed within months of the invasion, Russia has focused on conquering eastern and southern Ukraine. Russia annexed Crimea 10 years ago and had a far bigger geopolitical footprint in the neighboring Ukrainian areas, making the former a logical target. Ukraine is a major Black Sea grain exporter, hence the latter was done to prevent exports. Thus, Russia occupied Donetsk for most of 2023, increasing pressure on the eastern Russo-Ukrainian front. In 2024, the Russian army would target Pokrovsk, the region's largest city. Russia's 2024 summer effort to seize the 6,000-person city, which connects the eastern front to Ukraine, made sense. It was an act of rashness. In May and June, the main Russian army targeted Kharkiv instead of the eastern front. This city in the same region was under siege in the first few months of the invasion in 2022, but the Ukrainians retook it by September. Russia preferred infantry tactics over armored vehicles, tanks, and long-range artillery strikes in Kharkiv. According to local reports, Russia utilized awkward turtle tanks to absorb as much Ukrainian fire as possible and give infantry forces more breathing room. Russian infantry used motorcycles for maneuverability and speed instead of armored vehicles. The summer campaign aimed to cover as much land as possible quickly, with as little of Russia's heavy armor as feasible. The severe scarcity of tanks Russia could commit to the campaign may have caused this. By 2023, Russia was running out of contemporary armor. Russia's most current battle tank was the T-90, an updated T-72 from the Soviet era. Ukraine has been able to defeat the T-90s by using Western tanks and exploiting the autoloader, a chassis weakness. Unlike Western tanks, the T-90 and T-72 autoload and store crucial ammo behind the turret. An explosion from a mine or drone, which Ukraine is a specialist at, might destroy the tank by detonating all the stockpiled ammunition. By eliminating Russia's more advanced tanks, Russia and Ukraine have relied on Soviet-era tanks like the T-72s, T-62s, and T-55s. Russia had to recover or re-equip Soviet tanks for the battle due to Western sanctions. The Kharkiv offensive and its effects. Despite most tanks being deployed to the Eastern Front, Russia focused on infantry tactics to advance into Kharkiv. In the early weeks of the summer attack, Russia made modest gains, advancing 10 miles into Ukrainian territory, but not approaching Kharkiv. Russian losses were significant, with an estimated 30,000–70,000 soldiers in the invading army, causing daily casualties of around 1,200 men across all fronts, according to Ukrainska Pravda. By May and June, Russia had lost 70,000 soldiers as the Kharkiv front intensified. Russian morale suffered, and some analysts believe the Kharkiv push was either poorly planned or a diversion to draw Ukrainian forces away from the Eastern Front. Russia's strategy in Kharkiv backfired. After initial gains, Russia's advance stalled and Ukraine reinforced the Eastern Front. Ukraine retook border settlements and declared victory as Russian forces rapidly withdrew. Despite gaining 400 square miles in the east, Russia paid a high price, losing 70,000 soldiers and substantial equipment, while Pokrovsk remained secure. Ukraine had not yet received significant foreign aid when the summer invasion occurred, but after the offensive, financial and military support began arriving, prompting Ukraine to act. Ukraine's Kursk strategic counteroffensive. In August 2024, Ukraine launched a surprising and successful invasion of Kursk, one of the most significant breakthroughs in 18 months of fighting. Kursk, like Kharkiv, was expected to be heavily fortified, but Ukraine attacked with a smaller force, likely around 1,000 troops, and quickly gained ground. The Ukrainian success was attributed to better artillery support, which targeted Russian military installations and infrastructure, cutting off Russian troops' access to supplies. Russia had overestimated its ground force's strength, with many of the stationed troops being inexperienced recruits. In the first week of the fighting, Ukraine captured 300 Russian soldiers, 80% of whom were fresh conscripts. Initial Russian reports downplayed the scale of the invasion, but Ukrainian and Western intelligence later revealed that the attack displaced 12,000 to 2,000 people and resulted in the occupation of numerous villages. Despite artillery resistance slowing Ukraine's advance, Russia's efforts to reinforce Kursk with trenches 25 kilometers deep seemed insufficient. Reports indicated that Russia refocused on the Eastern Front, with troops advancing toward Pokrovsk in late August. The Russian military's disregard for civilians was evident, with continued attacks on residential areas and hospitals, violating international laws. Ukraine, working with humanitarian groups, sought to minimize civilian casualties while targeting Russian military reinforcements. The Kursk invasion demonstrated Ukraine's ability to achieve significant gains with limited Western resources, acquiring 500 square miles in just 3 weeks compared to Russia's 400 square miles of Ukrainian land between January and July 2024. This success has given President Zelensky the confidence to request more advanced military support to continue pushing into Russian territory and force Russia to reconsider its position in the conflict. Conflict escalation and future effects. In a recent Russian airstrike on the Eastern Front, 127 missiles and 109 drones were launched, with Ukraine's air defenses shooting down 102 missiles and 99 drones, limiting the damage to military and civilian targets. However, Russia has expanded its military objectives, including a drone strike on a dam near Kharkiv, signaling its determination to continue its invasion. The Kursk incursion offers a potential solution as Ukraine has strengthened its drone capabilities and received NATO long-range missiles, enabling precision strikes against Russian territory. Ukrainian drones now have an 1,100-mile range, potentially impacting Moscow directly, which had previously been shielded from the crisis. Additionally, Russia faces significant internal challenges. Rural and ethnic minority communities, particularly in Siberia and the Far East, have suffered the most casualties. Around 900,000 Russians have fled the country, many of them skilled laborers, further draining the capital, Moscow, of critical manpower and anti-war sentiment. If Ukraine can apply direct pressure on Moscow, it could shift public opinion and destabilize Putin's regime, potentially affecting Russia's leadership and international relations. Ukraine's military growth and NATO support. Please return to the second reason why Ukraine's Kursk invasion can fix its air defense. Zelensky can request Patriots and other anti-air systems from NATO countries, since the army can resist air attacks while advancing in enemy territory. These can help Ukraine maintain momentum and push Russia without air reprisal. Ukraine has another aerial advantage. The F-16s arrived. NATO's 65 F-16s will be flown by Ukrainian fighter pilots over Ukraine after months of training. One of the most modern fighter jets for both sides is the F-16. Russia has Su-27s, which were designed to oppose the F-16, but failed. F-16s are meant to weaken Russia's aerial control over Ukraine. This is why Zelensky has insisted on requesting more fighter jets to safeguard the nation. The Ukrainian army's minor win at Kursk can be considered a forerunner and spark for wartime action. Why is airspace control crucial to wartime transition? Russia's saber-rattling is the answer. Economic impact and prospects. Russia has resisted NATO's 2022-2023 efforts to end the war by supplying Ukraine with advanced weapons, with Putin warning against NATO crossing Russia's boundaries. Despite using nuclear threats to deter NATO support for Ukraine, the likelihood of Russia deploying nuclear weapons has decreased, especially after Ukraine's continued resistance and gains on the Eastern Front. NATO has aimed to support Ukraine enough to prolong the war without directly engaging Russia. Following Ukraine's success in Kursk and Russia's nuclear silence, NATO may increase its support, pushing Russia to lose leverage against the West. Economically, both Russia and Ukraine have faced significant challenges. The EU and US have provided Ukraine with nearly $350 billion in financial and military aid. Ukraine made strides in disrupting Russia's Black Sea control, notably with the Magurayev 5 drones, which contributed to the sinking of Russia's flagship and other ships. By late 2023, Russia's fleet had lost 26 ships, and Ukraine resumed grain exports via the Black Sea, with 2,300 ships using the reopened corridor in 2024. Meanwhile, Russia's economy is increasingly isolated, especially after the EU cut its oil and gas exports. Russia has turned to China and India, but trade with China faces limitations, and oil exports will decline in 2024. Despite this, military spending dominates Russia's 2024 budget, constituting 39%, far exceeding other nations' military spending. Russia's economy remains heavily reliant on its energy sector, but this is unsustainable. While the energy sector grows, it exacerbates employment inequality and shifts resources away from manufacturing. Additionally, Russia's dependence on Chinese imports increases China's geopolitical control over it. If China halts exports due to U.S. pressure, Russia's economy could collapse, undermining its militaristic ambitions. Despite initial hopes of leveraging its resource advantage to exhaust Ukraine, Russia's military disadvantage and Ukraine's continued resistance make victory increasingly unlikely. With NATO support growing and Russia's economic vulnerabilities deepening, Putin's position has weakened, and Russia faces limited options moving forward. The Russo-Ukrainian war may end in late 2024 or early 2025. If that happens, Putin will have no footing to demand peace because peace will be enforced on Russia, which might be disastrous for Russia. What do you think? Does the Kursk assault of Russia signal Ukraine will win quickly, or will the fight last years? Please remark, and thank you for watching. Thanks for watching our video. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Goodbye, and see you